everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and today I just got back from watching Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. And let me start off by saying that when this was first announced, I was one of many people who was kind of questioning, why would you make a prequel to Fury Road when Fury Road seems to be the movie where everything kind of resolved? Like, we know that Furiosa tries to get back to her home only to find that it no longer exists, and it's just like this really sad moment. So we're gonna get a prequel where she's trying to do that the whole movie, and we already know it's not really there. So I was like, why do this? You know, why not do sequels where we can follow these characters? And hopefully one day we do get those, by the way. But I will say, after seeing this movie, I totally get it now. Like, this prequel does actually really flesh out the world that we're presented with in Fury Road. I know it's Mad Max series has been a thing, but I just mean, like, in particular, like the Citadel and the Bullet Farm and Gastown, and how the way that these essentially kingdoms all work together, and you know, basically just the whole economic system that they have set up here. I think this movie does a much better job as to fully fleshing that out. You get more of a geographical idea of, to like, okay, here, if there's like a big Game of Thrones style map, you know, we kind of get those overhead shots of like, here's where this is and here's where that is, and it feels like they spent more time on that. So if there's any one thing that Furiosa does better than Fury Road, I would say it is that. Like, I'm gonna go watch Fury Road again, and now I'm gonna be like, okay, this all, even though it did make sense before, now it even more like is a concrete concept in my brain as to like, what's happening, what are these people way over here, and what's that town way over there. Like, it all makes sense now. Having said all of that, let me just say right now that this movie is not the epic masterpiece that Fury Road is often, you know, said to be, right? Like everyone, you know, Fury Road is like this lightning in a bottle, like just amazing thing that's just constantly moving. It's just like one big road trip, basically. Like, we're gonna go way down this way, and then we're gonna turn around and head all the way back, and that's what the movie is. This movie is not like that. And only in the sense of like the pacing is very different. It's divided in chapters. We're skipping over large periods of time at certain points, basically to the point where like the pacing does kind of pause for large moments. You know, we'll get like an epic action moment, and then we'll pause because either we're skipping to another chapter, or we're just, you know, there's a lot more moments of characters being able to just kind of sit and, you know, just kind of talk. I guess is the only other way to say that. So it's not as constantly moving like Fury Road was. And I do think that's going to be something that people walk away and be like, oh, it's not as good as Fury Road. And okay, fair. I do think that the pacing is slower here, but we do get more time, it feels like, to live in this world. When we do get those action moments, they are, I would say, equally as amazing as they are in Fury Road. Like, some of the ideas they came up with are just the absolute kind of action figure insanity that you would think of when you're like a little kid playing with toys, and you're like, and then a giant claw comes up, and then a parachute guy with that's on the back of a motorcycle, and then he's shooting down at the people on the truck, and it's all just, it's craziness, and it's really, really great. So yeah, I think that is one thing that a lot of people might be kind of divided on. It is slower, it is more methodical, it is more of a character study than Fury Road was. Like, we're spending time with Furiosa, we're spending time with Chris Hemsworth Dementis, who is a great character, by the way. You know, so I think while it's not as solid of a one-piece, just masterpiece as Fury Road was, it is still a really great movie. You know, if Fury Road did not exist, we would probably be saying that this was the best Mad Max, I think. To be honest, like, that's where we're at. Like, Fury Road was such a high bar that it's difficult for anything to ever get past that bar, but this got pretty damn close, I would say. So just take that as my overall review of, like, it's still pretty damn good, even though it's a slower paced movie, it's more methodical, but we still get those amazing action sequences. Speaking of Dementis, Chris Hemsworth's character, this guy reminded me of Jack Sparrow with a little bit of Heath Ledger Joker in there, where he's just kind of this zany agent of chaos, you know, and he's just there to conquer as much as he can, cause chaos. He's really like the wild card that's thrown in there, but also with a hint of way too much overconfidence. He walks into situations, he doesn't know what he's dealing with, but he's like, I'm here to conquer everything, what's going on, everyone bow down. And we'll get into spoilers a little bit later, but when he first meets Immortan Joe, that overconfidence is definitely on display, where it's like, oh, you did not understand what this was. You just walked in here and you thought you could do what you wanted. You didn't know what this was. So he is that kind of character where he's not like, not everything works out for him, but he definitely kind of, you can see how he garnered this following because he kind of just exudes this like insane levels of confidence that are definitely not always deserved, but like you can see how other people would be like, well, I'm gonna follow that guy, you know. But like I said, he's definitely pulling off this whole Jack Sparrow type bit where he's just kind of goofy and zany and he's gonna say silly things, and this is definitely where a lot of your comedic moments are gonna come out of. Also, Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa. I think she did a really great job here. She doesn't come in until later. There is a younger actress playing her from like, I don't know, 9 to 12, and then Anya Taylor-Joy comes in, and I will say they do lead all the way up to where Fury Road would start, you know. So I guess you just have to kind of use your imagination and be like, pretend she turned into Charlize Theron at the very end there. Just use your imagination, just because Charlize Theron does not show up and, you know, do that final little scene there. So you just have to pretend like, okay, a couple years passed, she turns into the other actress. There you go. Let's see, what else? Also, just Immortan Joe, he's as scary as ever. He doesn't get that much screen time. You know, he says a couple cool lines and you get a little bit more of the Citadel, but overall it's not nearly as much of a presence as maybe you kind of thought it would be given the trailers. Like, he's definitely there, but like, this is definitely more Dementis in Furiosa's story than anyone else. Also, we do kind of get this other character. I don't quite remember what his name is. I'll have to go look it up later, but I was just referring to him as proto Mad Max. He, you know, like, this actor pretty much could have played Max in any other instance. Like, he's even kind of, he's got like the shoulder piece on, and he teaches Furiosa everything she needs to know, and he pretty much helps train her to become the badass that she was in Fury Road. And there's like, I don't know if there was necessarily a romance. There kind of was, but you know, he teaches her everything she needs to know, and well, obviously he's not around in Fury Road, so you can guess what happens there. But it was interesting that they introduced this character that, like, and I don't know if this kind of lends itself to Max being more of this mythological figure where like maybe a bunch of different people could have personified who Max was, and that's why there's always like these kind of weird rumors as to like, oh yeah, I've heard of Max, you know, like in some of the older movies they kind of play around with that. So we basically have this guy who, it's not Max, but he kind of dresses like Max and he acts like Max and kind of looks like Max, and I'm like, this is kind of interesting that they did that. Okay. Anyway, so maybe when I watch Fury Road, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess Furiosa, you know, obviously they don't trust each other right away, but like they kind of team up together, and maybe Furiosa is like, he's kind of like that other guy I knew. Weird. I don't know, maybe there's something there, I guess, I don't know. Anyway, so that's Furiosa. You know, it's divided into chapters. It's definitely a slower pace, but like I really enjoyed living in this world, seeing how the Citadel would deal with like a direct challenger in Dementis, and we get like this whole you know, kind of Game of Thrones type civil war where like he's gonna go conquer this thing, and so now Dementis has to work with them, and Immortan Joe, they have to like have this uneasy alliance, and it's a lot of, you know, kind of Game of Thrones style politics of people conquering this, betraying this, doing all kinds of stuff. It's pretty cool. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of spoilers. I'm not gonna like go over the whole plot, but basically what we deal with, and again, spoilers, here we go. Okay, so Furiosa, like I said, it's divided into chapters. They skip large amounts of time. They do something pretty interesting near the end of the movie, where the entire film, it feels like it was kind of building up into this epic war between Dementis and his roaming group of bikers versus Immortan Joe and all of his war boys and the Citadel and all that, right? It felt like they're building up to this epic, crazy war between these two giant factions, right? Because early on, Dementis had conquered Gastown, which basically means like, well, as long as he holds Gastown, we can't afford to make him our enemy, because he can, he's always threatening to blow up Gastown, and obviously in Mad Max world, having access to gasoline, as they call it, is kind of invaluable. They kind of need that, for all the cars that they drive all the time. So yeah, whoever controls the gas is kind of an important big deal now. So he takes over Gastown really early on, and they have this uneasy alliance between, like, we have to work with each other, so fine, you're the new guy, we'll give you food, you give us this. But the entire movie, Immortan Joe and all of his crew are kind of plotting to take down this guy, because they're like, we can't trust this guy, we don't know what he's up to, he's too crazy, And he's definitely like, Dementis is plotting to take over all of the wasteland. He's like, okay, we're gonna conquer this, and then we're gonna do this, and then I will be the ruler of the wasteland, and that's like his goal, right? So he takes over Bullet Farm at certain points, or at least he like partially takes it over. He just goes in there, destroys everything, and so now Immortan Joe has to move against him, and we build up to this epic war. But then the movie makes an interesting decision. So they go to attack Gastown, and then they all have war, and we basically get like a montage sequence of war happening. We see like a couple of people fighting each other and explosions, and then different images fading in and out, and we get a narrator basically talking about all the epic wars of history and how like this will be the war of the wasteland or something, and it lasts for 40 days. And then that's pretty much it. Like, that's like the scope of the war that we get, this 40-day war. And they kind of just gloss over all that. And they just speed up to the end of this 40-day war, and to where it's now just Furiosa hunting down Dementis here, right? And it's just him and a couple guys left, because obviously they lose the war, I guess. And she's just chasing them all down on a bike, and it's just like they kind of like leave it off with her final quest of revenge on Dementis, because he had killed her mom when she was a little girl. He had killed the guy who trained her, the proto Mad Max guy. He had killed him. So, obviously she's chasing him down for revenge. But it's interesting that like they did all this build up for like this epic war, and then we kind of just skip it, really. Which was I can see people getting a little upset at that part, because like, really, you did all this to finally like, all right, we're at war with Immortan Joe. 40 days later, just skip, and then now we're pretty much getting to Dementis' death scene, right? It was an interesting decision. We did get plenty of action throughout this movie, so I don't feel like, oh, we missed out on a whole bunch of action, but I thought maybe they would at least show us one big clash of like, an army of motorcycles versus an army of trucks and giant things, like clashing into each other. But we didn't really get that. We kind of get the remains of a battle scene where a bunch of dead bodies are everywhere, and like, oh, okay, I kind of wanted to see that, but all right. Now, don't get me wrong, the final confrontation when Furiosa is hunting down him and just a handful of people he has left, and she has to track them down one by one to figure out which one is Dementis, because they all split different directions. That's really cool, and ultimately her revenge is pretty neat. It might drag on a little bit. They kind of each give their own speeches, and then I guess he did not know that who she was this entire time until she kind of like, remember me, I was the little girl and you killed my mom, and he's like, oh, it's you. So I was like, oh, he didn't even realize that was her. And ultimately the death that they give him, or at least, they kind of make it vague, but I guess this is what Furiosa said she did. She ends up planting a tree into his body, because she had like this seed from her mom, from the green place, and her mom was like, don't let the green place die, and so he plants the seed in his body, so he's like still alive, but this tree is growing out of him, which you know, I'm not a doctor. I'm not sure how, scientifically possible that is, but it was pretty crazy to see. Um, so, I guess he's technically still alive, but that's a pretty good revenge. You're just a tree guy now. You're just food for a tree. So that's pretty crazy. Yeah, and I guess my only thing is there are still some questions that the movie kind of glosses over because we get these time jumps. For example, when Furiosa is basically just given to Morton Joe as part of Dementus's uneasy alliance. They greatly like set up Furiosa for like, oh, you're gonna be one of the future brides, which is really disturbing. And then Furiosa runs away and hides, pretending to be a boy, right? She like covers herself up and they think it's just some young boy. So they must have been like looking for the Furiosa kid that they just got from Dementus, right? They must have been like, wait, where'd she go? She ran away, she's gone, right? But then later on, she's like openly calling herself Furiosa, especially in Fury Road. They know her, like that's her name. So I'm like, so at what point did they realize that this was the girl who had ran away and was hiding inside the Citadel as a boy this whole time? They never really addressed that, They established that like when she's a little girl, she pretends to be a boy and she's just hiding within the Citadel. And then I guess at some point she's just openly like, okay, no, it's me. I'm the girl. I'm Furiosa. I was the girl that you got from Dementus. But no one, like, I don't know. It was kind of strange. They just kind of gloss over that. They're just like, now she's calling herself Furiosa. She doesn't have the disguise on anymore. And now she's just like a driver. But like neither a Morton Joe or any of his kids who are being really creepy. No one ever like talks about it. And I was like, okay, I guess we're just not. It kind of feels like it would be like this big reveal when she's like, it was me the whole time. I didn't run away. I didn't die. I was here the whole time inside the Citadel, pretending to be one of the guys. But there was never like that moment. It was just kind of a like, okay, and then we skip a couple years and it's just happening. So I don't know. It does feel like parts of this do still need like another comic book series or something to like fill in some gaps, because I still have questions. Like, one, I want to see the war. Two, like, I was like, well, how did this situation work with the Citadel and her disguised herself and then she wasn't undisguised anymore? I don't know. I still have some questions is what I'm saying, but either way, it's fine. Also, we do get a very, very, very quick Max cameo. It's really just the sequence of her walking through the desert, and then high up on a canyon, Max is just like, his car is just parked and he's just like eating something, and he's basically in the same position he was at the beginning of Fury Road, where he's just overlooking the canyon wasteland. So I think there were some discussions of a possible Mad Max prequel, so it would be cool to see what was he doing during this time period. And I know there's all kinds of questions as far as the timeline of it all goes, because I know those original movies, some people say like, oh, those original movies are in a different continuity, but then sometimes they're like, well, no, those happened before all of this. But then you got to start asking like, well, how old is Mad Max supposed to be? Like, is he supposed to be like in his 50s or his 60s? Like, how Tom Hardy was not that old, right? So like, I don't know. You start to question things as to like the age and the timeline, and I think this is just one of those series where like, let's just keep the timeline canonicity stuff a little loose, because you start asking too many questions as to how long the world has been like this. Furiosa was a small child, but now she's a grown adult, so Mad Max must have been a certain, like, was that during the first Mad Max movie, I guess? It's all up in the air. Maybe it's just best not to try and timeline it all out, even though I know some people will. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this movie. You got some great action sequences, even though I walked away with some questions. And yes, I think towards the end of the movie, you do start to kind of feel its time length. I think it's, 2 hours, 20 minutes or something along those lines. It is unlike Fury Road, which was constantly moving. This one, you do start to feel it, especially when we finally get to the third act and they're both kind of giving their speeches. You start to feel like, all right, wrap up the speech. Come on, like I know you're gonna kill him, and then he's gonna give his speech, and then she's gonna give her speech, and then the narrator from earlier, now he's talking. you know, you're kind of like, okay, all right, come on, let's just see what you did. Did you kill him? Did you, you know? And she planted a tree in him, you know. So okay, it is just it is a little bit long. It drags a little bit. The chapter thing, I think, was a good choice in the sense of, like, we really do feel like you see her whole life, you know. And it definitely sets up really well for Fury Road, so this would be an interesting, like, 2-part watch here. But yeah, you do kind of feel its length at times, especially like near the end. So overall, I really enjoyed Furiosa. It had some amazing action sequences, stuff that I'm not gonna forget anytime soon. But I do think it's not quite as strong as Fury Road, but also pretty much nothing is, I guess. You know, like what action movie could really hold up there? Like maybe a couple of the John Wicks, I guess. It's difficult to reach that bar for a reason, you know. So I'm not gonna like hold that against this film for not reaching that bar quite. But yeah, in any case, I really enjoyed this one. Still have a couple questions. Dementis was crazy. He was like a great addition to the villains of this franchise because he was just such a wild card. You didn't know what he was gonna do. Does he have a plan? Does he not have a plan? And even then, he's so overconfident that you're like, is he just dumb or is he lucky? You know, like this is just a Jack Sparrow situation. You can't tell, you know? So anyways, let me know what you guys think about Furiosa and any of the questions that you might have timeline wise, and you know, kind of the inner workings of like what happened here exactly. Anyways, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.